Okay. Welcome everyone to another Kandji Demo Day. These are a series of live events that we do to highlight certain aspects and features of Kandji. If you want to see any of our previous Demo Day events, you can find them on our YouTube channel if you're looking to catch up. Today's Demo Day is going to be focused on Kandji Migration Agent and how it can assist customers in smoothly migrating their macOS devices from their existing MDM over to Kandji. I'm Brian Van Peski, a solutions engineer here at Kandji. I'm joined by two of my cohorts from the solutions team, Joe Solomon, who will be manning the Q&A section of the webinar today, and Jim Quilty, who is our resident migration expert on the solutions team and will be helping to provide an overview of the Kandji Migration Agent and the migration process on today's webinar. Super excited to have you guys here with me, as well as all of you attendees out there on the internet. Speaking of questions, if any questions do come up as we go through this demo, feel free to ask them in the questions section of the webinar, and we'll answer it either in the chat or live on the webinar during our Q&A section towards the end. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive in. So what's on the agenda for today? As far as the Kandji Migration Agent goes, we want to discuss why we use a migration agent to migrate those devices into Kandji, an overview of some of the migration workflows, depending on what type of devices you have and if they're in an Apple Business Manager or not, a couple of considerations for migration as you go through the process, and then some common pitfalls as well, just to make you aware of. So let's kick things off. Why use migration agent? Jim, before we talk about why we even offer a migration agent, it might be helpful to frame the discussion with some additional context. You and I have both been part of MDM migrations in our past careers with, I don't know, maybe varying degrees of ease or success. Today, when an admin wants to migrate between MDM solutions, what are some of the biggest challenges that they're going to face?
Yeah, absolutely. Migrating from one MDM to another isn't always straightforward, and I think the two biggest challenges with the process are usually that it can't be fully automated and that it has to be kind of a rip and replace, right? The old MDM has to be removed before you can enroll into a new one. So admins have to consider how do they get their users to complete that enrollment process and how long are those computers going to be out of management as part of the enrollment. These hurdles can sometimes cause admins to second guess the decision to make that move, even if there's a cost benefit or a simplification or streamlined management in the new MDM.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's super helpful context. And I think at this point, this is where the Kandji Migration Agent comes in, right? So let's pivot a bit. How does the Kandji Migration Agent help streamline that process of migration?
Yeah, that's honestly exactly why we built the migration agent is to solve those challenges. It's designed to automate the parts of the process that we can automate and guide users to enroll into Kandji in the best possible method, whether that's automated device enrollment or a manual enrollment. We don't want admins to have to micromanage their users or to put hands on every single device in order to complete the enrollment. If it's a tool that we want to provide to you to make the enrollment process as smooth as possible for both admins and end users alike.
Perfect. All right, cool. So now that we understand kind of the problems that the migration agent is solving for, let's dive into the workflow for deploying the Kandji migration agent itself and kind of what that looks like in practice from the admin perspective. Jim, you do with these all day, so I will hand it over to you.
Absolutely. So once you're a Kandji customer, that's when we will provide you with a unique Kandji migration agent package, along with documentation that guides you through the process of using and deploying it. The first step of the process is actually installing the migration agent on computers. This usually is done through your existing MDM or even an RMM tool. Really, anything that can be used to install a package on your computers can be used to deploy the Kandji migration agent. The existing MDM management then has to be removed. Like I said, it's a rip and replace. Sometimes the migration agent itself can do that process, but more commonly, the existing MDM has to send that unenroll command. In the background, the migration agent is actually looking for the removal of that profile. Once it's been removed, it prompts users to enroll into Kandji in the best way possible. The actual prompts that the user sees will differ depending on whether they're going through automated device enrollment or manual enrollment, but one thing is always the same. The user's always going to be asked for their password, so there's always a little bit that they have to do. Once that's done, though, the migration process is complete and they're enrolled in Kandji.
Perfect. Easy enough. Like I tell customers all the time, we've migrated hundreds of thousands of devices from every MDM under the sun. It's a very known science here at Kandji, and we do make that process as seamless and as streamlined as possible. Usually the next question that comes up after we talk about what it looks like from the admin side is like, oh, okay, well, what's required from my end users? What are the steps that they're going to need to take? And that process from an end user perspective is going to differ depending on whether the device is in Apple Business Manager and eligible for automated device enrollment or needs to be manually enrolled. Either way, we've streamlined that process and there's inherent logic built into the migration agent to handle both scenarios. So you don't really need to worry about that. Really going to be two touch points: the installation of the Kandji MDM profile, approving that installation, and then potentially rotating the file vault to recovery key as well. So let's dive into a demo and what it looks like from the end user perspective. This first one, let's say we're deploying the migration agent through self-service, and then this device is eligible for automated device enrollment. Jim, I'll hand it back to you.
Yep. So the first step is obviously to install the migration agent. Like Brian said, this example, we're using a self-service portal, but you could also do it automatically in the background. So after the migration agent is installed, it finds the best method for enrollment, and we're waiting for that existing management removal. Then we're going to ask the user to confirm they're ready to enroll. In this case, this is the automated device enrollment notification. So the user is going to be asked for their password to approve the installation of the MDM profile. In this case, we're also leveraging automated device enrollment authentication inside of Kandji. So the user is going to be asked to go through a login flow with our identity provider in order to complete the process. This will actually also allow Kandji to automatically assign the device to the user on the back end so that we can, one, know who the device belongs to and take advantage of any user or group-based information as part of our assignment map. After this process is complete, the computer is now enrolled in Kandji. So in the background, the MDM profile is installed and any additional profiles are coming down as well as our actual official Kandji agent. We're also, in this case, going to leverage our liftoff tool so that we can show the user we're still completing some tasks under the hood. In this case, we're removing any leftover components of the old MDM. And then the last part of the process is going to be that file vault key regeneration. The user is going to see a notification, and then they're going to complete the process using the Kandji menu bar item. This is the last time they're going to be prompted for their password, and once they hit OK, the migration is complete, and they're now enrolled in Kandji. So usually takes less than 5 minutes to go through the entire process, and should be pretty painless.
Awesome. Perfect. I know a question that does come up is like, ooh, well, I kind of have a mixed fleet. About 20% of my devices, was pre-Apple Business Manager. What does that mean, right? Do I have to have my users visit a URL and manually click on a profile? We do our best to streamline that process as well and make it look as similar to the ADE enrollment process as possible. So let's take a look at what a non-ADE eligible device looks like with Kandji Migration Agent.
Yep, and the first part of the process is going to be exactly the same. We still want to get the migration agent installed, and that tool is still going to detect the best method for enrollment. Once management is removed, again, we're going to make sure the user is ready to enroll. Once they confirm that, now things are going to look a little different. So in the background, we're actually downloading an enrollment profile and then automatically opening system settings so that the user can complete the installation. Here, they do have to double click on the profile and click install. And again, they're going to be prompted for their password. Here in this demo, we've actually chosen not to enforce authentication for enrollment, just to streamline the process. But then again, profiles are going to be installed, our Kandji agent is going to be installed, and then file vault key regeneration after the additional components of the MDM are removed. So we've made the process look as similar as possible to automated device enrollment so that as an admin, you can provide a more streamlined set of communications to your end users, telling them what they're going to need to do and what they're going to see.
Awesome. Thanks, Jim. My users are actually pretty naughty and they will do anything possible to ignore any prompt to do anything. Do we have anything built in the Kandji Migration Agent to kind of assist with that?
Well, we can't force enrollment on them, right? They do have to complete the process themselves. That's an Apple requirement. We do run in the background every 5 minutes. So if they don't complete an enrollment right at the start, 5 minutes later, they're going to get that notification again. So hopefully we get pretty annoying pretty fast so that they just want to complete the process.
Perfect. Great context. So that's what the migration workflow looks like, both from an admin perspective as well as the end user. Let's talk about some considerations for migration. Before you even kick off this process of migration, what are some things that you should have on your checklist as an admin to go through before you kick off migration?
Yeah, absolutely. There are a number of things that admins should both look for and make sure are in place ahead of time so that they can make the process as smooth as possible. Um, in the existing MDM, it's important to grab any kind of secrets from your devices. Activation lock bypass codes or recovery keys aren't things that we can necessarily get after the fact. And even though we do regenerate the file vault recovery key, or rather, we ask the user to regenerate the file vault recovery key, again, that is something that they have to do themselves. So there is going to be an amount of time where we might not have the secrets that you need in Kandji. Testing and documentation is probably the biggest thing and most important thing that you can do, both so you as an admin know what's going to happen during the process and so that you can let your users know here's what you're going to see and here's the actions that you're going to need to take to go as you go through this. In Kandji, you're also going to want to make sure that your existing blueprints are set up and ready to go, that you have any kind of necessary approvals like privacy controls or system extensions ready to go so that when the device does enroll, your existing installed software continues to function after the migration.
Cool. Sounds good. So let's talk about what the Kandji Migration Agent does not do. The migration agent's sole purpose in life is to make sure that your devices get migrated into Kandji. It does not migrate any existing MDM configurations into Kandji. Ultimately, that's going to be the responsibility of you as the admin to rebuild your configurations inside of Kandji. Again, Kandji takes a completely different philosophical approach to mobile device management. So this is always a good opportunity to reassess what you're scoping, how you're scoping it, and streamline your process. Also worth noting, this tool is for Mac OS only. Apple doesn't allow us to run custom PKGs on iOS. Please reach out to us if you'd like to discuss more about iOS-specific migrations. Also worth noting, this process happens after your purchase order. The Kandji Migration Agent is custom built for each individual customer based off their needs. It's not something we can pull off the shelf and hand out during trial. So just be aware that that happens after purchase. If you would like to know what the steps are that the Kandji Migration Agent is going through, we can provide that to you so you can mainly walk through those steps to get a feel for what the migration process looks like. While ultimately you are responsible for the migration, you'll have access to a dedicated support resource on the SE team, and we'll typically respond to migration queries within 24 hours during business days. So, Jim, I mean, you've done thousands of, probably more than that, migrations with customers. This seems like a pretty straightforward process, but with all things computers, there's going to be some rough edges. So what are some of the most common pitfalls that you've seen in your experience that admins need to be aware of as they go through the migration process?
Yeah, absolutely. So the probably testing and communication is probably the most important thing you can do before deploying the migration agent to your organization. You as an admin, like I said, need to know exactly what's going to happen on those devices when existing management is removed, and you need to communicate that to your end users. So testing things before deploying to production is probably the biggest pitfall that I've seen where not enough was done, and so you get into production and things go awry because you didn't know what was going to happen. So it's important to make sure you communicate that and that you as an admin know what's going to happen.
So you're not suggesting YOLO to prod, Jim?
I mean, if you want a YOLO to prod, I'm never a fan of that though.
Gotcha.
Um, Again, if you use any apps that might modify network access, obviously network communication is needed to both download an MDM profile or complete automated device enrollment. So if you are using any tools that might modify that, VPNs, proxies, network filters, those are things that a lot of the times are approved through MDM. And when existing management is removed, they can either fail or the user might see additional notifications or be asked to take additional actions in order to make sure network communication continues to function. Again, that goes back to testing. Those are things that you should be able to catch very easily as part of that process. Going alongside that, Wi-Fi. A lot of the times, companies are still deploying Wi-Fi networks through MDM or even wired networks that use enterprise authentication. These are things that do have to be taken into account. Again, anything deployed through that MDM that's a profile does get removed with the main MDM profile when we unmanage those devices. So it's important to plan ahead for those types of things. That could be something just asking your users to connect to a guest network or potentially setting up an additional network that is known to the computer so that computers can automatically join it during the migration process. Again, these are things that all can be accounted for, and we definitely have tips to help you through that process. Then the probable biggest pitfall that can happen is broken MDM communication. Computers do need to be able to communicate with the MDM in order to typically receive that unenroll command. So if there's broken communication, that part of the process can't happen, and it can stall things out. There are definitely ways that we can mitigate that or restore communication, but knowing ahead of time that it's broken in the first place helps, and being able to remediate it before the migration process helps just make sure everything goes smoothly.
Perfect. And Jim, if I think that's maybe a concern in my environment, you have some tips and tricks that you can share during on that migration ticket to help remediate those.
Absolutely. There's various ways we can try and both restore communication or actions we can take to try and kind of break glass in case of emergency type of scenarios.
Perfect. Cool. Well, that's Kandji Migration Agent. Before we get to the Q&A section, I do want to mention a couple of things. First of all, this is a series of events that we're doing monthly. Our next one is going to be covering Kandji Passport. That's going to be next month. If you would like to register for that event, feel free to scan the QR code up on the screen, or we'll include a link in the chat as well. We hope you're enjoying these. When you register, you can also check a box to register for all future events as well, so that you always have it available on your calendar if these are things that you're enjoying attending. The other thing, a survey. We'd love to get your feedback. What do you think about these events? Is there something you'd like to see featured on one of these events? Let us know. That link will take you to a Google form. Give us your thoughts. Let us know how you enjoyed this talk, previous talks, anything you want to see in the future, any improvements you feel like we could make to these demo days. There's also a couple resources if you want access to a little more details about what the migration process looks like. We have some overview content, some videos that we can share as well. Joe will include those in the chat so you have access to those. And with that, let's head over to Q&A.
Hey guys. We have one question I've been saving. It's been asked a few different ways. Basically, since the user has to be an admin, what happens if the user is not an admin during the migration process?
Absolutely. There's a little bit of nuance to that. In general, the user did have to be an admin in macOS versions prior to macOS Sequoia, but they do still need to be an admin for manual enrollment. Now, the Kandji Migration Agent has logic built in to account for that. So we actually don't promote users to full administrators. We actually modify the authorization database if we detect that the user is not a local admin to grant them a very, very specific permission to install the MDM profile. That allows them to complete enrollment regardless of macOS version or their status as a user.
Awesome. I have one more question, which I am typing an answer to, but I think we've covered this one as well. We talked about what the migration agent does and what it doesn't. In terms of it migrates the devices, it does not migrate configurations or settings. Those are going to have to be rebuilt on the Kandji side. A couple more questions. Is there a way to control the password changes for end users? We also use one login desktop to sync user password to MacBook. What is a good workaround, or how does Kandji account for that? That sounds like a Passport conversation. I would reach out to your support team or look into our support articles around Passport. I believe we're having a demo day around Passport as well in the future.
Yep, next month.
Yeah.
Great webinar. Keep them coming. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
The ability for assisting mass deployment is a key advantage for your solution. However, this did not jump out at us as a capability for initial deployment and onboarding. Okay. Not sure if that's a question. Can the migration agent use Jamf API to unenroll from the MDM?
The migration agent itself is focused on getting devices enrolled into Kandji, but we do have some supplemental tools for a number of MDMs. Jamf is one of them. So when you are in your onboarding process, that's one of the additional tools that we can provide, is a way to help with that unenrollment process. So definitely ask your CSM about that, or your account executive if you're currently in trial.
Okay. Atif asks, we don't use Okta or anything like that. Can that step be skipped for automatic enrollment? Yes.
Yep, absolutely. Yeah,
yeah,
you don't need to require auth during enrollment. If you still want to method for automating like assignment of users to devices, we do have the ability to do that with some API tools as well. So if you have a CSV of serial numbers and who they belong to, we have some scripts in our public GitHub repository that I can assist with the device assignment to users as well.
I'll also call out that is a totally optional, but it also uses general SAML. So it doesn't have to be Okta. Any SAML provider could be used as the authentication mechanism. So Google Workspace, Microsoft Entra, OneLogin, Ping Identity, pretty much any provider that supports SAML can be used there.
And final question from an anonymous attendee. Is one of the migration agents specifically designed for moving MacBooks from Intune to Kandji while leaving Windows machines on Intune? So Kandji currently supports Apple devices only. So you would only be migrating your Apple devices from Intune to Kandji. There's no way to accidentally migrate Windows to our Kandji agent.
Yeah, the migration agent is deployed through a PKG file, so that wouldn't even run on Windows computers. And in Intune, I know you can specifically target groups or devices when you're deploying software.
I am curious to know how it unenrolls the device, considering the devices are enrolled in another MDM. Again, the agent is being deployed to the other MDM, and part of the process, the instructions we provide give you how to complete that unenrollment process. It's going to be different from each MDM, so we can't be specific on specific steps. Thank you. You're welcome, Atif. From Mohammed, also, is there a way to also change a device password remotely to be able to wipe a machine? This is for a situation when the machine is lost or stolen. Those capabilities are built into Kandji. They have nothing to do with the migration agent. Reach out to support and they can provide you with instructions on how to achieve those results. What steps need to be completed before starting a migration? I mean, how to make sure we are ready. That's a great question. There's tons of resources that are going to be provided. Jim, where can they find more information if they're in trial?
Yeah, absolutely. You can definitely reach out to your account executive if you're in trial, or your CSM if you're just getting onboarded into Kandji. We have various resources. The checklist that you saw in the presentation was actually pulled from a document that we have and can provide that's a basic checklist. The exact steps and exactly what you need as an organization is obviously going to differ for every organization. So I'd say we have a checklist that can kind of be generalized, but there's always going to be a little nuance to that. You can definitely work with both our support team and your CSM, and of course your solutions engineer helping you with the migration to make sure that you are prepared.
We only have a couple minutes left. If we don't get to your question, we will respond to your question after the webinar. I'm just going to cherry pick one more question here, see if they're... last one from Abhilash is, what steps do we need to take before migration if devices have MSDC set up for another MDM? You're probably going to want to read our MSDC compliance documentation to see how you can migrate those configurations into Kandji, and also read Microsoft's documentation about how to switch your compliance platform from one MDM to another. All right. Thank you, everyone. We are at time. If we haven't answered your question, I apologize, but we will be getting back to it after the webinar.
Cool. That's a wrap. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.